Jimmy Butler's reputation at the moment is as clubhouse cancer, basically, as locker room cancer.
I remember one time he cursed out a coach in Chicago for not holding him accountable. He literally got on the coach, telling the coach, "You too soft on me."
His reputation around the league is that he was the problem, not only in Minnesota's locker room, in Chicago's
Yes.
Yes. The infamous cold take. You say something out of the spur of the moment thinking confidently that it's the right thing to say, only to realize you made a pretty idiotic statement later down the line. And that's exactly what's happening to a lot of people and quote-unquote experts right now. The Miami Heat are in the NBA Finals for the second time in 4 seasons. And the man of the hour, Jimmy Butler, has completely rewritten his career and is creating a legacy as the lead man on the Miami Heat and continues to squash all the negative narratives said and written about him for so many years. We have to go way back to Jimmy's days with the Chicago Bulls, when the entire story about Jimmy being a locker room cancer really started to become a thing in the media. And looking back at it now, it just shocks me how this all became a runaway narrative in the first place. Back in 2015, it was around the first time Jimmy Butler's name was associated with locker room turmoil, which isn't surprising because that was right around the time Jimmy started molding into the player we see today. He was coming off a season in which he won NBA's Most Improved Player award, made his first NBA All-Star appearance, and increased his scoring average from 13 a game all the way up to more than 20 points per game. He was now in many people's eyes the best player on the Bulls, in part because Derrick Rose was pretty much a shell of his MVP self from 4 seasons earlier. Jimmy relished this opportunity to be the man in Chicago. He was a super passionate player with a chip on his shoulder because he was barely drafted in the first round, and now was his chance to showcase himself. While Jimmy was showcasing, he stepped into that leadership role fast, even publicly calling out the relatively young Bulls head coach for not coaching them hard enough. And it was quotes like this that rubbed some guys the wrong way in the locker room. But Jimmy was ultra competitive because of his crazy upbringing and just that killer instinct he had since day one in the league. He always wanted his teammates to work as hard as he does. He even reportedly had issues with D. Rose not working hard enough. So was he a cancer for how he was with Chicago? The narrative was that Jimmy was the problem. But how far has this Chicago gotten with Jimmy since he was traded in 2017? And speaking of that trade, it's no secret that Jimmy Butler's time in Minnesota was the driving force behind the locker room's cancer narrative. But the issues in Minnesota were a lot like the issues in Chicago. Jimmy felt the guys weren't working hard enough and didn't have the same fire and desire as he had to win games. On paper, the Timberwolves had a talented roster in Jimmy's first season there, and the roster looked solid enough to be considered a threat in the Western Conference. The Timberwolves had one of the best young centers in the league at the time in Karl Anthony Towns and a talented offensive weapon in former Rookie of the Year Andrew Wiggins. But both Wiggins and Towns supposedly irritated Jimmy by seemingly disinterested too often. And, as you probably remember, a few months after Jimmy's season ended in Minnesota, he was already angry enough with the organization that he requested a trade in September of 2018. And since the Wolves didn't trade him right away, he took matters into his own hands. Famously, I might add.
Turned to practice for the first time with the Wolves, and I'm just gonna read a little bit of Adrian Wojnarowski's report on what happened there. That you were loud, emotional, passionate, we like to say, targeting Coach Tom Thibodeau, teammates like Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins. That you told GM Scott Layton, quote, "You effing need me." How would you describe what happened today?
A lot of it's true. A lot of it is true. But you gotta think, I haven't played basketball in so long, and I'm so passionate, and I love the game, and I don't do it for any other reason except for to compete and go up against the best to try to prove that I can hang. So all my emotion came out at one time. Was it the right way to do it? No, but I can't control that when I'm out there competing. Like, that's my love of the game. That's raw me at my finest, me at my purest. That's what you're gonna get inside the lines.
But instead of regular old practice, Jimmy literally and figuratively put his foot on the throat of everyone in the building by taking the third stringers sitting on the bench and running a 5-on-5 scrimmage against the starters, and absolutely dog-walked the starters with his bench-riding teammates. So much so that the entire team was, quote-unquote, mesmerized by what Jimmy had pulled off that day in practice. Adrian Wojnarowski on Twitter: a lot of Minnesota players left Timberwolves practice today energized by Butler's performance, mesmerized with him taking end-of-the-bench players and running the table on the regulars, sources said. In the end, he marched out as if a mic drop. Butler delivered a tour de force, Twitter. And, no offense to Wolves fans, that day remains the single most interesting moment in the Timberwolves franchise history. All because an entire organization ticked off the most competitive guy in the entire NBA. And they immediately paid for it. And yet, they label him a cancer instead of applauding him for his commitment to wanting to be a part of a winning culture. They labeled him a cancer because he called out his young teammates for not committing to winning like the leader Jimmy was. They all owe Jimmy an apology.
When I first got to Philly, what did you think of me?
I didn't know.
But if you go by what you read,
Yeah.
what do you think of
Oh,
me?
yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting
That's
back,
right.
I'm relaxed. I'm like, these motherfuckers think I'm an asshole anyways. Let me be quiet.
Going to the Miami Heat was the greatest thing that could have ever happened to Jimmy Butler. And I'll completely be honest, I didn't see him elevating himself to a future Hall of Famer after 4 seasons in Miami. But, number one, Jimmy finally found the culture that was perfectly built for Jimmy's character and persona. And 2, not only did he shut down all the talk about him causing teams trouble, he proved himself as one of the best leaders in the entire NBA.
It was the social media that was making Jimmy out to be like a cancer, his bad teammate. That's when he was leaving. You heard the Minnesota situation.
Yo, we work every single day. It's nothing drastic, but we do work. We expect you to come in here and help us win. We're not trying to lose. No, never.
Yeah.
Every single year, we're in it to win it now. We ain't worried about 3 years. We can't control that. And that's how I think. I think I don't know what the hell I'm going to do tomorrow. Yesterday's gone, but right now, I'm going to be the best version of me that I can be.
And boy, did he do just that. They said Jimmy messed up by leaving Philly.
You think that was the right move to leave Philly and go to Miami for him personally?
Well, first of all, that deal hasn't been finalized yet, but assuming that it does happen, I will tell you this. I think it's absolutely the wrong move. I've known Jimmy Butler for years, got a lot of love for him. The very, very things people lament about his personality is what I love about his personality. He's a straight shooter. He's not a liar. He's no nonsense. He'll get in your face. He holds himself and others accountable. I remember one time he cursed out a coach in Chicago for not holding him accountable. He literally got on the coach, telling the coach, "You too soft on me." Yeah, that's what he did. This is who Jimmy Butler is. So, he's perfect for Pat Riley because Pat Riley loves that stuff because they don't play any nonsense that exists inside of you. Pat Riley will strip from you the minute you arrive in South Beach. Make no mistake about that. Here's why I don't like the move for Jimmy Butler. You'll never be loved.
I don't think people understand just how quickly Jimmy changed the entire identity of the Miami Heat. Jimmy just didn't lift the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals in his first season there. He completely revamped the entire franchise. This was a team that didn't even lose a home game for the first 3 months of the season. This was a team that had 11 guys, 25 years old and younger. A team that had the look and feel of an upstart team that was at least several years from truly contending. But folks finally got the opportunity to see Jimmy's true colors and see just how great of a leader he is when everyone in the franchise is as bought into winning as he is. The more they underestimate him, the better he performs. How Jimmy Butler made the All-NBA second team, but was not selected as an All-Star this season is a mystery. Jimmy gave buckets to any all-defense caliber defender Milwaukee threw his way, including Drew Holiday, who's arguably the best perimeter defender in all the NBA. He torched the Knicks. He devastated the Boston Celtics. And Grant Willis, too.
Driving is Brown. Doubled and trapped. Grant Williams 3. having words in the ear of Jimmy Butler.
Williams defends Butler. A bump, the grind, the gyration, and the 2 in the foul.
And they're having words. Look at this.
That. Nose to nose.
Yeah.
Eye to eye.
And he's cut, or no?
But what Jimmy's done this postseason can't be commended enough. He averaged 38 points on 44% shooting from 3 against the first-seeded Milwaukee Bucks, and only continued this incredible tear he's been on. Through 3 rounds of the postseason, Jimmy is averaging 29.4 points per game on 49.6% shooting overall from the floor. On top of that, he's doing what he's doing, yet again, while leading an army of teammates that includes 9, count them, 9 undrafted players and 0 All-Stars, making it the first since the Detroit Pistons in 2004, a team made the NBA Finals without a single All-Star on their team. Though it a crime Jimmy wasn't an All-Star, but let that sink in. Them folks who labeled Jimmy Buckets a cancer, man, they're awfully quiet now.